All right. Welcome to today's class all about farming. We're going to start with a 1,000-foot view or a definition around farming. Farming in a neighborhood is just like farming a field. You got to be able and willing to do it year over year over year. You don't have a farmer go buy a plot of land, plant some crops, harvest it one year, and then call it quits. That's not farming. That's just simply growing a garden for one year. When you're looking to farm a neighborhood, you want to get methodical about it. You want to treat it as its own separate business. So just like what we talk about with our business, farming takes some time. Farming can take a year and a half to 2 years to gain traction. Just like when you guys started in real estate, it takes about a year to a year and a half or 2 years to gain traction. Now, there's multiple people in this room that have already done deals. So it's not like when you start farming, you're not going to have any deals come up within the first couple of years. You're obviously going to fall into some deals if you do it right. But what I'm getting at is the first year and a half to 2 years, it just prepare yourself. It's all going to be your proactive nature around farming that neighborhood that's going to get you some results. After about that year and a half to 2 years, you can actually devise it to be a little bit more hands-off, a little bit more automated. After a year and a half to 2 years, you're going to get some people that you may have met one time, the first time you went door knocking. They've never opened up their door for you since, but they get your mailers. They see your face. They understand that you're knocking in that neighborhood, and they might start to reach out to you. And that's where the reactive part comes in. Any business we build, real estate or our lead generation systems, and models are its own separate business. It takes time to do that. Understand that, and you'll be all right. Please don't be that person that calls and says, I'm farming this neighborhood, and after 3 months, it hasn't worked. After 3 months, if it hasn't worked, you probably only touched that neighborhood 3 times. People want to do business with people they know, love, and trust. So relationships are built over time, right? It's multiple times through multiple events to get them to engage with you. So if we understand that off the rip, you'll be fine. But farming takes some time, takes energy, it takes effort. There's no such thing in real estate as any lead generation source that doesn't have all of those components. So we want to understand that. I think there's a lot of farming classes out there that are a lot different than what I'm about to portray to you. If you ever take any classes from a vendor, a title company, a lender, or whatnot, they're going to teach you stuff, but they're going to puff it up because they want your business. I want to just do a farming class on the raw, real, and in-depth piece around it. So understand that if you're going to farm, take some time and do it. If anybody starts a farm, do not even think about changing or giving up your approach for at least a year, at the very least a year. All right. Now, before we go into devising your plan, we need to talk about some different, how do I want to say this? Before we go into devising your plan, we want to talk about what to farm, right? Riddle me this: how hard is it to farm a rural acreage community?
Hard. I'm doing it right now.
Right. Why is it hard, Ann?
For me, it's hard to get just all the details I need. And it's also hard to find the houses. And I don't know, just for me, it's harder to get the information. It takes a long time versus a very like a close put together subdivision is easier.
Yeah, one of the main reasons why I personally probably will never farm an acreage subdivision, if you will, is because it's extremely difficult to door knock. Ann said it the best, an in-town place with lots of different houses close by. It's not even just that it's easier to door knock. Most likely you have more opportunity, meaning more houses. And so I always try and find a neighborhood with a large amount of houses. If you're going to do it right, because we got to understand that there's the scale of percentages in each neighborhood too. And what I mean by the scale of percentages is When I walk into a neighborhood of 100 homes, I can't expect more than a 20% open rate. Just like emails, just like postcards, just like newsletters, to about 20%. So if I'm only knocking on a 100-person subdivision, I'm only likely to have about 20 doors open up. Now, if I pick a 500-person neighborhood, then it's going to take me longer to door knock, but I'm more likely to interact with a bunch of different people. This message is the same. It's the same content, same material. It's just more time. Maybe multiple days of door knocking. Maybe you do 100 each day of the week, or 200 a couple times a week. Whatever that looks like for you is going to be up to you. But yes, if you're going to farm anything, make sure it has a plentiful amount of homes. The other thing that you got to be careful around is a neighborhood in which doesn't really want you there. Meaning subdivisions that have these covenants and bylaws around soliciting and going out. I'm going to mention this over and over again, and I guess we might as well make this point. If you're going to farm, you better be door knocking in your first couple of years. After your first couple of years, you might be able to tailor it down. Or if you're only going to send out postcards and gather information through email and maybe Facebook pages and stuff like that, just understand that takes a lot longer to build the relationship. It's not that it doesn't work. You're going to have to do it more often and for probably a longer period of time before you're that branded person in that neighborhood, right? If you're just canvassing a neighborhood just to call it, just to get some leads, that's not farming. That's just cold calling and door knocking. So if you're going to farm it, I highly, highly encourage you to really sharpen your door knocking scripts and skills. The best way to do it is with neighborhoods with a lot of houses and with a lot of close-knit houses. The other reason why I believe that closer subdivisions or subdivisions with 500 to 1,000 homes are important is because those homeowners are used to seeing neighbors. They're used to seeing people. They're used to, it's congested. So they see people outside and they know their neighbors when they mow their lawn and they go get their mail. They walk their dogs. Like, they get to know that type of thing. And so they're used to that sort of thing. The other thing is that there's not too many companies out there that door knock neighborhoods that we don't door knock, right? Security companies, roofers, painters, they all use the same method. So when you do that, one, you got to understand that there might be a little bit of a guard when you open up that door. But two, the neighborhood's kind of used to having their doors be knocked on. I can't imagine what that feeling would look like going into an acreage community that has never had anybody knock on their door, and you go knock on their door. They're probably going to have a shotgun, maybe not even answer the door. They're probably going to think that your car broke down and there's an emergency. It's just that they're not used to it. So make sure you understand that neighborhood count of houses is super important. Make sure that you look into the HOA documents. And then what else? What's another major point to any subdivision that you try and start farming? This is like the number one thing to take away from picking out your neighborhood. Harry, it looks like you got it. Perfect. So the number one thing that you want to make sure is you understand the turnover rate in that neighborhood, right? If you have, just because you can find a 500 house subdivision does not mean those homes sell very often in there. Sometimes it has to do with price point, but I would venture to say more often than not, it has to do with location. I know a couple of subdivisions in Fort Collins, as well as, I know a couple in Loveland too, but Fort Collins, Loveland, Longmont, almost every town I've ever been in has these areas where price point isn't really what it is. They just don't turn over. In Longmont, for instance, if you go over by McIntosh Lake, it's a very highly coveted neighborhood. Going over there, you need to understand that if you want to knock those doors, understand that the turnover rate isn't as high as, say, the east side of town. And it's because people want to be near McIntosh. So if you understand that, still door knock it. It's not a bad place to farm. It's a great price point to farm. They're great people over there. They're outdoorsy. I would farm that all day, but you can't expect to change that stat. You can't expect to turn that over. So if you know the stats going into it, then you'll have a better understanding of how many no's you're about to receive, how many renters might be in the neighborhood. Those different types of nuances is exactly what you want to look at. So there's a lot of farming classes that say, make sure you have over a 10% turnover rate. Make sure you have a 12% turnover rate. I'm not really that type of person. I just want to understand what and how often things turn over, because then if I understand that, I can make a budget around that. I can see where my marketing efforts are going to go, versus, if I'm doing a 5% turnover rate neighborhood, maybe instead of doing some sort of glossy print stock and door knocking with it, I'm going to go and door knock it with some door hangers because they're cheaper. But if I got a neighborhood that's turning over 20, 25% year over year, well, one, I'm probably wondering what's going on in the neighborhood, because that's a heck of a high turnover rate, huge turnover rate. For every 100 homes, 20 of them sell per year. That would be incredible, right? Well, with that type of neighborhood, I want to stand out because there's most likely other people are trying to farm this neighborhood too. And what I've learned with farming is a lot of agents cop out. I took over my neighborhood. There was 2 other real estate agents farming that neighborhood when I moved in. And the reason why I knew it was because I kept getting their mailers. Once a year, I got a pumpkin set on my doorstep. Every Sunday, I got a newsletter set on my doorstep. But no one made a Facebook page. I never once had that door knock. And as soon as I started knocking on that door, I had to change the perception of the neighborhood. They thought that I was with those other 2 agents that were doing it. And so my scripts had to develop. I had to go through there and do that. But if you have a high turnover rate neighborhood, I would look at seeing who's farming it. How can you one up them? If somebody's farming the neighborhood, here's one of the number 1 questions I receive all the time. Well, can I farm that neighborhood if somebody else is? Of course you can.
Absolutely.
That's like saying that one painting company that farms a neighborhood, another painting company can't go in and put some advertising out.
And the more you farm it, the more you're going to have mind share, which is market share. And so Bruce mentioned that the turnover, I looked at it as, how can I invest my time so that I own this market? And then my piece dealt with, nobody might be moving in that neighborhood, but maybe they know somebody else that is, right? So go ahead.
No, I love it, because that's where I was going to go next. Keep going.
All right, go ahead. And the other thing really quick, if you have a neighborhood that's 1,000, break it into section 1 and section 2, because 500 is about a number that you want to work with one group. And then if you want to move to the second group, you have that second group. You can be doing different things to each group as you're moving forward.
Bingo.
Sorry.
No, you and I are such in direct alignment. I love it. So your turnover rate is important to know. And I keep saying, if it's a 5% turnover rate or 3%, I still cannot tell you it's a bad neighborhood, and here's why. If it's a higher one, then yeah, you're more likely to door knock to get some sales. But better yet, I love the neighborhoods that are around that 7%, 7 to 10%. If I do it right, I'm going to help people in the neighborhood sell their homes. But better yet, just what Harry was alluding to, the people that have a lower turnover rate, those people are there for years, right? And the people that are there for years, they love their community. If they love their community and you don't come off as the person trying to push them out of their community, they become the best database members that you've ever seen, because they're there. They're in the community. They love it. They know their neighbors. They know who's in there. They're going to give you that leg up on who's thinking about it. Might not be that many people, but better yet, because they become your database members, and Harry and I teach you how to brand yourself to people in your database, all of a sudden you get these folks that are probably locals, been there for 7 years, 10 years, 15, 20, 30 years. They have a circle of friends that you can infiltrate. That one person, if they know 100 people and you brand yourself correctly, provide them the information they're looking for on their neighborhood, they're going to refer you business. they're going to have their friends go, yeah, I got a buddy that wants to move into this neighborhood. So I see your door knocking. I'll keep my eye out. And if you find anything, I got a buddy, like come back to me. Next thing you know, you're double ending the deals. You're getting referrals, buyer leads, different sellers in different neighborhoods because those people are there. Never shy. I personally would never shy away from a lower percentage turnover. And that's something that I don't think you guys are going to hear in a lot of farming classes. I'd say most all farming classes I've ever taken say at least an 8% or more. Harry, what's your take on that?
Yeah, well, I was just going to add to that. Bruce, a really quick script almost. Call me really quick and I would say, hey, Bruce, I'm
Yeah.
glad you called. My sister's kids want to buy a house. And I said to them, oh my God, you got to use Bruce, right? And so bingo, you just picked up exactly what Bruce is talking about. It just doesn't have to be in that particular neighborhood. It can be, it expands out for you because those people know so many other people, right?
Yes.
And so you end up picking up, hey, my daughter wants to, or my son-in-law, or whatever it is, right? And so that's exactly what you're trying to do is when people think of real estate, they think of Bruce.
Mind share. Exactly. Bingo. You guys, I actually have had the worst luck. I had the worst luck in higher turnover neighborhoods. When I say worst luck, higher turnover neighborhoods tend to have what?
Realtor.
Well, they have realtors farming it, but higher turnover neighborhoods tend to have non-owner occupied properties. Higher turnover neighborhoods tend to be the rental markets. Yep, exactly. That's just what I found. I'm programmed to think that I don't want something 15% turnover, because a lot of times what that's doing is it's investors moving in and out. Why? People don't want to be there. They don't want to live there. You get a lot of people that don't want to answer the door, a lot of people that don't like their neighbors, a lot of dogs barking, a lot of nuances that cause people to get out. So anyways, you guys know I'm all about building that database, and the people that are staying put are great database people. And in the history of any neighborhood, like Harry said, 500, you still have turnover. There's still houses that sell year over year over year. And if you do it right, and you're the one that doesn't push people out of that neighborhood, you're going to get that referral. You're going to knock on that person's door and they're going to go, actually, remember how I was talking about Susie like a year ago? Yeah, she actually fell and broke her other hip. I just talked to her daughter the other day, and they're probably thinking about selling their house. And I know that she doesn't answer the door for you a lot, but I'll mention a good name for you. I know she has your magnet on her fridge. Like, you guys, these are exact conversations I've had with people. The first neighborhood that I ever farmed was the place that I was renting, and I met this lady. We had coffee. She said she was never going to go anywhere, but she really appreciated me coming over. Her kids don't have to visit her as often, blah, 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 blah. About a year later, I get a call from her daughter. Yep, Margie's got to go to the nursing home. And Margie said that she would never, ever, ever sell her house without Bruce. I only met that lady twice, but I had 2 20-minute coffee conversations with her. And I didn't try and push her to be like, well, when you bust a hip, when you decide to go to a nursing home, you should list with me. It was, no, stay put, Marge. I want neighbors like you. I don't want you to get old. Anything you need, you let me know. I'll come shovel your sidewalk. I'll come do this. I'll come do that. She never took me up on it. She always hired everybody. But her daughter said, this lady will not sell with anybody but Bruce. I hope you're still in the business. It works.
Think about this real quick. 10% is 50 homes in a 500 home neighborhood. And the other thing that I'm going to add to that is, once you get to know that neighborhood, things that are going on in that neighborhood, events that you can put on in that neighborhood, Easter egg hunts you can put on it. I mean, you become it for that group, and people remember that. I don't care what anybody tells you, they remember, and they're going to look at that lady. Remembered Bruce. 2 20-minute conversations. He volunteered to do her snow and all that other stuff, and she wanted to use Bruce.
Bingo. Database. My firm belief when you go into farming is if you go into the belief that you're just building a database and that you don't want them to move, it's like the law of pressures just kind of hits you. You don't want them to move. All of a sudden you start to get listings. If you want them to move, everyone tells you no. When you farm a neighborhood, you need to be their friend. You need to make a relationship. So let's talk next about how we do that. So any questions on turnover rates and anything like that? All you do is take the number of homes in there, go look at that past, just draw a map in your iris around the subdivision, click on to see how many homes sold in the last year, and then do it for the year prior. Get your average of 2 years, and there's about your percentage. Take that number, divide it by the number of homes, and you've got it. That's an important piece to know. I do not believe it's an important piece to put thresholds on unless you want to. There's so many farming classes out there that push that. I'm going to push that if you're going to farm, make sure it's a large number of homes. That's about my basis. I know the turnover rate because I don't want to have any preconceived notions, right? If I want people to sell with me a lot, but I'm going into a 3% turnover neighborhood, I'm putting too much pressure out there. You're not going to change that statistic just because you're in front of people. You might have an uptick of sales because you get to explain the market, and the people that are hesitant around moving, yeah, they might move with you because you got to explain the market, and they never would have if you didn't knock on their door. I get that. Those are rare. So you're not going to push that scale. It's location for people. People like to live where they like to live. So understand that and know that, which means focus on the database. So our database, right? If you're looking at database and you're looking at, farming someplace and having that become part of your database, we really need to make sure we understand that we can't look at farming as cold calling or cold door knocking. We got to look at it as what we do to treat our sphere of influence. And so what that causes us to do is create a touch program, a touch campaign. And what we do with our sphere of influence is we don't have a 33 touch campaign where you dial like a robot and go, hey, Susie, I want to buy and sell. Do you want to buy and sell a home? Cool. Next. Hey, Bill, you want to buy or sell a home? Hey, next. That's not building a relationship, right? A lot of people that farm neighborhoods, I watch it. I used to get farmed. I watch these agents every single week, Saturday or Sunday morning. It's on my doorstep. The only thing on that flyer was sold homes. It doesn't do anything for me. It doesn't do anything for them. It doesn't build rapport and relationships. All it does is give me food for thought. And I'm going to call the agent that's been building my relationship and saying, hey, another agent put this on my doorstep, and I didn't know my neighbors were selling for so much. Now I'm actually thinking about moving back to Alabama. That's all that's going to do. If you're just a salesy farmer going through this neighborhood, they're just going to call their other resources. You might get some sales out of it, don't get me wrong, but you're not making that impression. So we need to make sure our farm has a touch program similar to what our sphere goes through. Maybe not as many touches, right? Our sphere of influence, this is for reiteration, should have at least no less than a 33 touch system. No less than. That's just marketing 101, statistically sound in any business. You got to have 33 touches per year for the people you know, love, and trust, or more. I think Melissa developed a 44 touch system. I use a 42 touch. A couple people use a 56 touch system. But for farming, we need to talk about this touch program, and we need to figure out how we're going to do it and what we're going to do. When you first start, here's kind of my recommendation is you're going to spend some money on flyers. You're going to spend some money on stamps. It's just inevitable. If you're going to farm correctly, you're going to spend a little bit of money and time. So when I first started, I'm cheap. I do not like spending money at all. So I knew that if I wasn't going to spend the money on it, then I needed to door knock more often than not. So my first step was I was going to door knock every other month. And the other month in between, I was going to call. That was the cheapest way I could do it. The dialer system that I had was cheap per month. I was already using it to cold call and lead generate around open houses and new listings and all of that. So I might as well use it for my farm. Door knocking caused me to, maybe you guys don't know, so I'll say it. When I door knock, I'm cheap. I use yellow pastel colored paper, and I print with black and white ink. And not black and white, because yellow, but I print with black ink only because it's 5 cents a copy versus 25 cents. Black ink is so much cheaper than the colored, right? But I used black ink on yellow pastel paper. I like yellow pastel paper because that's what notices get put on doors with. Utility bills, this sort of things, like your first warning type of thing, right? So I door knock 1 month with those flyers, and then I would cold call the next month. And I would do that until I got some money. And so that was mine. My touch program was easy. Door knock, call, door knock, call, door knock, call. What I had and what I said was a little different, right? You don't want to just blast them with stats. You don't want to just say that you want to get rid of them and they need to sell their home. So what did I door knock with? I used to door knock with nothing real estate related except for me and my stuff. And it said, Bruce Carley, your realtor. There's my number. There's my email. KW, because you got to be compliant. That's it. That's all the real estate stuff I had on there. I door knock with a list of events going on in the neighborhood. When is the Denver Zoo Days for free? What does the library have putting on? Library events are free. They're the easiest thing to go online and find for people. Local events, or I'm sorry, regional events. When do the Clydesdale horses come in? Those types of things. And here's the key, you guys. When I door knock with that 1 month, I'm going to call the next month. And I might talk about stats. I might ask if you know of anybody that's doing CMAs or whatever you want to do. The next month I door knock, maybe I door knock half and half. Here's what happened in Denver over the last couple of months, not events, but events that have happened, not upcoming. And then maybe the other half of it is stats for the neighborhood. And then I call again, and then bam. Each quarter, I was walking around with different events that were going on. And you guys, half of those events were the same events that I put on the first flyer. People throw this stuff away. People want to keep it. They might put it on their thing. And then when you door knock with the same material again, but something else is different, all it does is get replaced. Quit trying to recreate this stuff. Go look it up one time, save it, save the dates, and keep fresh on it. But the things that happen all the time, right? Like in Longmont, we have Friday night, what do they call it? Friday night music fest, something like that. It happens for like 8 weeks out of the summer. So I'm going to door knock with that probably, first quarter. And then I'm going to door knock with that same information second quarter. It's just like weddings, right? We say save the date, then the invitation, and then a reminder. People need to be reminded far more often than they need to be instructed, which means we can have the same content on things. But make sure when you're door knocking and calling, you change it up a bit, but it's not all about real estate. That's the number one thing that I see people fail at. It's all push, 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 real estate, real estate, real estate. That's not how you build relationships. That's how you build businesses, business relations, I should say. So that's how I started. It was an easy touch program, door knock, call, door knock, call. I was cheap. Then as you go ahead, hey.
I did the same thing. I was cheap. Door knock, call, door knock, call. That's what I did.
And it probably didn't work, huh?
Actually, it did work.
Yeah, no, that's what I mean.
Very, and I didn't do a lot of deals because I got into productivity, but my very, very first deal was a neighbor's daughter. He called me and God, I didn't even know where he gave me his address. And I'm thinking, I don't even know where in the hell that is. I know I'd walked the street, but couldn't remember. And so, oh, great, blah, blah, blah. You do the old BS. And then, yeah. So,
yep. No. And yeah, you do not need in this business. I say it all the time. Just get out of your own way, talk to more people than anybody else, and you'll do plenty of business. A lot of people hide behind marketing dollar.
I'm glad that you said that about people putting, I sold this house. They have no relationship. People pick that up and throw it away. Yep. Right. But if you were to knock on the door and they talk to Bruce, they're going to remember Bruce versus that direct mail piece that was shipped out.
Yep.
Yep.
And so, I door knocked and cold call, and I did that. I did you guys know me. I did open houses, farming and networking events. Farming, I only did for a few years. I learned that open houses and networking events were my bread and butter. But more than anything, you guys, the reason why I stopped farming was because I got to a place where I got so busy. I had marketing budget to do it. I got through those first 2 years. They knew me. Now my postcards with my face on it, the same message every time, Bruce Carley, your realtor, phone number and email with my face on it. That started to be not as effective as door knocking, but they knew who I was. I didn't have to door knock anymore. And so when I say I quit farming, I didn't quit farming. It was all just automated. And that to me isn't farming, that's marketing. The farming happened when I put the blood, sweat, and tears in, and then I built that relationship, and then I used the automation behind leverage and technology to continue. And I still got deals and leads, but then I switched my business to strictly open houses and networking events. And when I say I switched it, like I said, I just didn't door knock on my farm anymore. It was all automated. It was easy. It was hands off. You get an assistant, they'll do it all day for you. So I went a different route, just because the market, because of where I was living, because of everything. If you do it right, you will get the results. Let's keep going. So the next phase that I went through is I started losing track of time. I started to not have so much time to door knock and cold call every time. So then I went to door knocking. I always kept that in play. But instead of door knocking every other month, because door knocking definitely was more of a time piece, I would door knock 1 month, then I would cold call, and then I would send out a postcard, or I would hire somebody to go put door hangers up. They wouldn't knock on the door; they put door hangers up. When I door knocked, I would have my traditional flyers. I never ever changed. See, if people didn't recognize me, they recognized this guy with these yellow pieces of paper. I wanted that to be the consistent message when I was out there door knocking. So door knocking, cold calling, and then either send out a postcard or hire somebody to go drop some door hangers. Every door direct, what is it called? Every door direct mail, EDDM. Call the post office. And you don't have to have stamps. You don't have to do this. You have to set up an account for EDDM. Every door direct mailing. What that does is the post office will basically flyer your neighborhood for you, since the postal carrier is already doing it, but you don't have to pay for the stamps because you're just doing it to one neighborhood. You look it up. It's a beautiful system. It does cost money, but I think, let me just look so I don't misspeak. When I used to do it, it was 15 cents a door. So instead of a 55-cent
17,
stamp,
but yeah, something around there, 15 to 17, if I remember right.
Yeah, it might be more now, and that's why.
And it's a saturation piece. You have to make sure it goes to every household.
It goes to every household. You can't cherry
Has
pick it.
to, yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
And it's usually like one flyer.
Yeah.
It has to be the same message.
And folks, remember, if you were to door knock one time and leave that yellow flyer, people don't remember the one time. This is about that constant. And like Bruce said, they remember the yellow flyer because he did it more than once. And so pretty soon they become top of mind, right? So you have to continue to, I used to, somebody in some marketing class said it's at least 3 to 4 times before it finally sinks into their brain who that Bruce is, right? It's the call. Yeah. It's that. Yeah.
Yep. Here's the link that I just found. It looks like it's like 16.9, so 17, and it goes up to 19 cents. I don't really know what the difference is there, but it's an amazing tool to help you guys farm for very little cost. And like I said, if you can get your flyer down to a certain budget, then you do every door direct. It's so much cheaper than a handwritten envelope with a stamp on it, mailing it out. You get to set up when it goes out, what day, and all of that stuff. It's beautiful. So that was kind of my phase of progression. And then this is where things start to get a little bit more methodical. So now that I'm spending more money on my farm. So let's fast forward a little bit. I started door knocking once a quarter. So I was only door knocking 4 times a year versus 6 times. And then I got to the place where I only door knocked biannually, so 2 times a year. But I needed to step up my game. Since my presence wasn't there, I was already about 1.5 to 2 years in. I started spending some money because I didn't have time to door knock every time now. I had buyers that needed to go out and show houses. I had sellers that wanted me to pop some signs in the yard. So I had to spend some more money. Then I started to do a newsletter. This was something that was paid for, or I'm sorry, the shipping was paid for. I would put in a little blurb to this newsletter company. It's like $150 a house. And so $150 a house on 500 homes, that's a lot of money. And so once I started to transition into wanting to spend money, I'm cheap. I wanted to figure out a more effective way. So what I did was I started to cold call and door knock. I go around the neighborhood and I had this map. If you guys go on Google, this is how I did it. And I think you guys can still do it. Let me see if I can just share my screen so you guys understand what I'm talking about. If you go on Google, you get into the maps. If you zoom in on a subdivision, let's see if we can just do this one. So let's say this is let's say this is our farm. If you zoom in on a subdivision enough, you start to see all these houses. And so what I would do is I would try to get all the houses in one, but sometimes you can't. So sometimes what I would do is maybe just take this eagle crest, bald eagle, and just go around. And I would take a screenshot. Then I would go in and I would crop the image to only include, the roads I wanted or those homes. Then I would take another screenshot. And so before I know it, I had 2 to 3 pieces of paper. And what I would do is I'd start and I'd walk in the neighborhood and I'd say, okay, this person here has never opened up their door. I don't ever see anybody there. They've never called me, or they've never answered their phone. I'm going to put them as a maybe. Now, this person here, he was a jerk. This guy told me to buzz off, not to leave my flyers there. It was littering, blah, blah, blah. Cross them off. Boom. Done. And so when you start to direct mail, meaning you're not doing every door direct because that's every single door. When you start to pay for marketing, this is what I said. Farming takes time, blood, sweat, tears, energy. If you're not willing to do it, don't farm, because you're going to spend a lot of money. You're not going to wonder why results aren't there. And it's because the jerks are never going to call you. You're spending a lot of money on them. And if there's a 5% turnover rate and you're expecting 20% of the listings, it's going to be a tough go for you. So I'd print off this and I'd walk the neighborhood, and maybe I wouldn't door knock. I would just go through and be like, this is who I'm never marketing to again. I'm not door knocking them and I'm not calling them because they were jerks. These are the people that maybe I shouldn't spend money on the newsletter, but maybe I should door knock on them because they never answered the door. And that sort of thing, right? So I got real methodical. If we know that there's a 5% turnover rate in the neighborhood, I bet you anything, out of a 500 home area, you're probably, by the time you're actually 2 years, 3 years into farming, you're probably only going to be talking and marketing to about half of the homes in the neighborhood. Watch for sales. Start marketing to the ones that you don't get, that sell, and a new buyer moves in. I want to talk to you guys about this. So in my farm, and this is something that is a common theme, I took it one step further. I want to talk about orphan campaigns and what an orphan campaign is. An orphan campaign is when so here's the traditional definition, but you can take it into farming. Let's say that you have a listing, and I think Sherry left here, but Sherry, hopefully you watch this after you get back. Sherry had a listing. So she sells that listing and a buyer buys that home. An orphan campaign would be where she would start to mail that home over the next several years, once a quarter or once a month. And all it says is basically all it's doing is making that person feel like they worked with Sherry, making that other agent need to follow up with that person. So an orphan campaign is a buyer off of your listing that you didn't work with, but you have the address and they just bought. So you can create this campaign of, hey, it's been 30 days in your home. I hope you guys are doing well. If you ever need a resource, finding anything wrong with your home, here's a handyman. Oh gosh, it's been 6 months since you bought your home. By now you've been settled in. Hope everything is going well, blah, 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 blah. they start to, after a couple of years, not remember who they actually bought their home with, especially if that other agent never follows up, never calls, and never puts them on a touch program. You see, all of you guys in here struggle with your touch program. I did. When somebody told me I needed to reach out to my database 33 times a year, I thought they were off their rocker. But the agents that do that create that mind share and that market share. So an orphan campaign is a beautiful campaign off of just sold properties. So when I'm farming a neighborhood and I don't get those listings, but they sell, I'm going to start an orphan campaign on those specific homes. And I'm gonna one up my farming game. So those orphan homes, they get a little bit more, they get a little bit better. They get those 30-day reminders. Hey, change your smoke alarms, those types of things. Some of those things I'll implement into the farm, but for the most part, I'm going to set up orphan campaigns around listings that I didn't get that sold. And I'm going to set up orphan campaigns around listings I got that sold where I didn't bring the buyer. So as you go, create that touch program. Now, once you start spending some money, spend some money, but make sure it's effective marketing. You want your message to come across as still friendly, still relational. You want your real estate stuff to come across as things people would want to read. You want to start giving marketing material out that I would call a guilt give. So when you start to spend money, you might start to do some magnets. This is another example I've said in class before. I'll show you guys one of the pieces that I used to use. This is what I would call a guilt give. This is a magnet that talks about all of the different conversions, the measurement conversions, okay? It's a magnet that goes on their fridge, so it doesn't matter what season, doesn't matter if the Rockies are playing, doesn't matter if the Broncos are playing, it doesn't matter. So a lot of us give out those sports magnets. And I like the sports magnets. I think they're very effective. Can anybody see me? Ed, can you see this magnet?
Not clearly, but I can see what it is.
Okay, no, as long as you can see some of it. I like sports magnets. I really do. Sports magnets are awesome. But sports magnets are for the, sports magnets are for the, I just like this one. Sports magnets are for the season. I like guilt gives that never come off of their refrigerator. So that's one that stays on people's refrigerators all year round. Once you start to get into this, you can start to develop systems and plans. Now, that's a touch program that you continue to develop, you continue to work, and you continue to do, right? You want to lead with revenue, so start off cheap, but know that it's going to take more time, effort, and energy. But if you're starting off and you don't have a lot of deals going on, you have more time than you have money, so use it. Then when you start to get some more deals, you start to learn different ways of what do you want to call it? Marketing. Stop it, Kama. Kama's making fun of me for saying so many times. Once you get through and you start to do that, now I want you to think about events. So just to reiterate, here's the progression. Start off small, start off with more time than money. Once you get busier and busier and your farm starts to understand that you are who you are, you're building that relationship. Now you can start to spend more money on magnets and mailers, change up your touch program per month. Now I haven't said this, but I need to. When you're farming, it's once a month. It's not once a quarter. It's once a month. It's not every other month. It's 12 times a year. Do not cop out. If you're going to farm effectively. A farmer doesn't take a 20-acre parcel and farm half of it, right? They farm the entire thing, and you're going to do the same thing, but that's month after month. Once you start to do that, then you can start to graduate into some events. So now you might have your touch program month over month, but instead of 12 touches a year, you might increase your touch program to 16 touches a year. You might hold an event once a quarter. Here's one of the cheapest events that is out there and one of the most effective events. If you go on Amazon, you can find thousands of Easter eggs for super, super, super cheap. Now, when you do an Easter egg hunt, it does not need to have candy inside of those eggs. Keep it cheap. Maybe what you do is you put out Easter eggs, and at the end of the Easter egg run, or whatever you want to call it, you do like the 20 at the end have candy. And so all of these kids go through and what you do, so I've done this multiple times. Never, ever, ever go to an open space and just set out eggs everywhere, because you got to remember that the people that come, they don't know what that organization looks like. So the early people start to come and they go out and their kids gather up all the eggs, and the people that show up 10 minutes late or something like that, there's no eggs left for their kids. Or not vice versa, but a different way to look at it is all different ages. You know, the 2 and 3 year olds aren't going to go sprinting after 50 different eggs that a 7-year-old can pick up in 20 seconds. And so what I suggest you to do if you do an Easter egg hunt, you want to set up some lanes. So go to Home Depot, you get this like the construction ribbon, super cheap, super easy, lots of it. And you go through and you make these lanes, and you do it for the different age groups, right? 3 and under, 3 to 5, or 3 to 4, and then 4 to 5, 5 to 6. Cut it off, have like 4 or 5 lanes, and then put out the appropriate number of those, and then have each lane go at separate times, so their parents can kind of get around that and watch their kids do it. The kids stay in the ribbon. The eggs are in the ribbon. No parents are allowed in unless it's the real simple age group, and it becomes fun. Get an Easter bunny costume on Amazon, super cheap. Bring somebody with you. Do not be the Easter bunny. Okay, you want to brand yourself. You want to mingle. You want to have people there. So bring an Easter bunny. Bring a kiddo or bring a college student. Pay them a couple bucks to take some photos with the Easter bunny. Super simple, cheap and easy and effective. It's one of the cheapest and most effective events that I've ever ran. Do it once a quarter. Sometimes in the fall, do a pumpkin carving contest, and maybe not a pumpkin carving contest, maybe a pumpkin painting contest, or do a pumpkin painting contest at the event, but a pumpkin carving contest in which they bring their carved pumpkins and you do a $15 Starbucks card. So bam, they brought the inventory because they carved a pumpkin, brought it. You didn't have to spend any money on pumpkins, and everybody votes for the favorite pumpkin and you give the award to them, right? Maybe have bowl candy and stuff like that, and spruce it up. But what I'm getting at, you guys, is add events to it. Spend some money if you want. I like in the summer, maybe you do some sort of water balloon toss competition, or maybe like a summer Olympics. You do a water balloon contest competition. You do a cornhole little competition, and the winner of all 3 then compete against all 3, and you get creative with it for little to no money. Obviously, those neighborhoods probably need to have some open space in them in order to do it. But the other thing that you can do is dump day. Maybe you hire or you pay for a roll-off dumpster, like a 20-yarder, first come, first serve, and people get to come dump their trash in. You limit it to more like knickknacks around the house instead of couches and furniture and stuff. But maybe you allow some people to put a couch or a piece of furniture in there. Maybe they pay you, $25 versus them trying to do it themselves. And then you can get 2 roll-off dumpsters, right? You can also do a shred day. There's local companies that have these mobile shredding units. There's these big trailers that are big, heavy metal equipment. You pull it up and it runs off a generator, and people can come and shred their stuff. Think about it and make farming fun. Make it what you wish it to be, and you'll see the results. But it's got to come from contribution, right? None of the events said, hey, come learn how to do a CMA on your own home. No, come bring your kids and see the Easter Bunny and grab some eggs. Come grab some candy and we're going to have a pumpkin carving contest. You know, I think the one year we did maybe like 3 or 4 crock pots of chili, since we got a chili cook-off today. We did 3 or 4 crock pots of chili. Come grab a bowl of chili, come decorate a cookie, and enter your pumpkin into a pumpkin carving contest. You guys can get real creative with it. 4th of July, maybe it's not an event, but instead of door knocking with a flyer, go around and door knock with American flags. Do not ever, no matter what you do not stick things in people's earth. Do not stick flags into people's ground. You do not know what their religion is or their political beliefs are, but giving them a flag with your business card on it, whether or not they have a political belief that they can't stand that you put it on their doorstep, it's better than putting it in somebody's earth. Trust me, I know that from experience. What are some other things you guys can think of? I don't know who's listening and who's all participating, but is there anything else you guys can think of that might be a good idea to share with the group? Anything that you guys have seen in your neighborhoods? I've got another one. What about a Saturday morning pancake and sausage breakfast? It's a little bit more involved because you're going to have to bring a griddle and you're going to have those things, but you can have sausage already pre-cooked in crock pots. You can have a griddle there, and you can pour and snap up some pancakes. And the longer it takes to cook pancakes, the longer you get to chit chat with people. Put out a couple of chairs and some tables, but better yet, just go grab a bunch of blankets from Goodwill that, you know, don't look halfway bad, but set them on the ground. Have a pancake and sausage picnic morning. Have a cup of coffee there. It's a little bit more involved, but it's cheap. Sausage and pancakes, super cheap. Just got to have the material for it. What else? Anything else you guys can think of you've seen? Put on a car wash. Yeah, there you go. You put on a car wash. Alyssa, can you explain more? I've got a couple ideas around that. I've actually never done that, and I like it a lot.
Yeah, so what I saw was a local realtor put a car wash on in like a local church neighbor, like a parking lot, and they just hooked up the water and probably paid the church something to have it there. But then, yeah, they just washed people's cars, whoever drove up.
That's what I was just thinking, is you might not even have to have it at a church parking lot. You can have it maybe, you know, in the neighborhood somewhere where there's like, you know, parking space by the open space. And you get with your local church and see if they can have volunteers, and then, you know, all the proceeds go to the church. But it's something quick and easy that somebody can, instead of driving across town to the church, the neighbors can just drive up, pay $5-10, have that done. I've heard of quite a few realtors that do community garages. Yeah, there you go. Advertise and put on the community garage sale. I like that too, Melissa. There's one other thing we did, and again, when you farm, you need to make sure that if you're going to spend money on something, have the same events. The team that I didn't do this personally, but the team that I used to work with, they purchased an inflatable screen, projection screen. So it's this big inflatable screen that has this little quiet fan inside that kind of stays up. And it's got the big white screen in the middle, and on a TV tray. That's all we had, was a TV tray. We asked one of the neighbors if we could plug in that outlet, and they said perfectly fine. We plugged in there, we ran an extension cord, we had a projector, and people brought their chairs, their blankets, and I think even one person in the neighborhood had a popcorn machine. They were they loved it. So they brought over popcorn for free. I didn't have to do anything. I think I gave them a $10 Starbucks card just for volunteering. But they had popcorn for us, and we watched the movie, and that was it. I'm going to precurse with, if you're going to do a movie night, understand that there are rules and regulations around. You can't just go out and buy a DVD and then play it. You do have to pay for basically a licensing thing. If you're putting on a public event to the public, I think it's $200 to have that license. So if you're going to get that license, then save that movie and do it every year, right? Around Halloween, maybe you do a pumpkin carving contest, and then all of a sudden it gets dark early, and you do a Hocus Pocus movie or something like that for the kids, for the family, whatever you need. But here's the end all be all, you guys. If you're going to farm, Make sure you know all of those nuances. So let's reiterate this. We'll get off this call. You want to know the metrics of the neighborhood. You want to know what you're getting yourself into. You want a large count of homes. 500 is what Harry said, and that's what I've heard over and over again. Try and get up to that 500 mark. Do it somewhere where you believe you want to door knock, right? If you don't like the neighborhood, don't door knock it. It's going to be hard for you to sell yourself on it, right? The other thing that you got to do is you got to understand that you need to be in front of people for at least the first couple of years. Can you guys all hear me? Ed, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
All right, my earbuds are going out. Make sure that you guys walk through and you guys have a plan of action for your first couple of years where you definitely know your face and your voice is going to be in front of them. I'm not saying you have to do what I did. I'm not saying you have to door knock, call. Set yourself up on a, door knock, call, mailer, door knock, call, mailer, or maybe door knock, call, mailer, and then event. I mean, you can start off with stuff like that. Just make sure that you have a plan. Make sure that the people in your life start to realize, hey, this guy door knocks around the middle of the month every single month, or this guy door knocks, or I hear from him in some way, shape, or form around the first of the month. Never, ever, ever start your farm and go, holy crap, it's the middle of the month. I don't know what I'm going to do. And then all of a sudden you door knock at the end of the month, and then the new month begins and you're like, okay, I'm not going to do that again. I need to go back out there. And then all of a sudden you're door knocking with only a gap of like a week or 2 weeks. Make it consistent, and make sure your face is in there for at least the first 2 years. Make sure your marketing material has some real estate in it, but mainly to build relations. Your scripts and your words ask for the business, and then advance it over time. Continue to one up your game. Most agents that farm, what they do is they start off with their game up here, and then they're like, well, this isn't working as long as I thought. Maybe instead of door knocking, I'm just going to tailor it back. I'm going to do this, and I'm going to send out a newsletter once a quarter instead of once a month. Don't be that. You need to start low and scale up. Anybody that starts to tailor back, you're losing all that business. You're losing all that momentum, right? Any questions? I must have hit everything. Cool.
What's the best way to find out if you're allowed to door knock in the neighborhood or not?
Good call.
I mean, the HOA.
That's a good call. So one, I would see if you can get the HOA bylaws or at least the HOA information. Now, if you call an HOA, there's a 90% chance that even if you can door knock in that neighborhood, the person over the phone is going to tell you no, because they're the ones who gets the complaint. So I don't know if I'd ask the HOA directly. I would see if I can get a copy of their bylaws, right? How do you get a copy of their bylaws if you know nobody in the neighborhood, you don't live in it, and the HOA company won't give it to you? I want you to call a listing in the neighborhood, say you have a potential buyer, but before the buyer wants to see the home or go under contract, they'd really like to see it, take a look at the HOA bylaws, because they don't want to waste their time or your time with setting up a showing if the HOA won't work for them. And you can sometimes get those things out. If you can't do that and you can't go anywhere, the first thing I would do, Ed, is I would just check the county or the city. Some cities require you to have permits that cause you to not be able to knock without a permit. So I'd call the city, see if you need a permit to knock on doors, and then I would just go knock. If no one can give you the HOA bylaws, they're not online, and the sign coming into the neighborhood or subdivision doesn't say that you can't door knock, then door knock. And if the HOA comes out, if a neighbor comes out and starts to show you their bylaws and you can't knock on, ask for forgiveness. Tell them you went through everything. Look, there was no neighbor that was willing to give me any of these bylaws. I called the city. I apologize. And then you get out. but that's why you want to start door knocking right off the rip before you spend a bunch of money. You'll find out fast, but good question, Ed.
Thank you.
All righty. If there's no other questions, I'll end this. Good luck to everybody at the chili cook-off. Get to your local market centers and let's do this. Caleb. Yeah. All right. See you guys soon.